Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back, way back, to a land of pyramids, pharaohs, and endless sun. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine the searing heat on your skin, the dry air catching in your throat, the smell of dust and the faint scent of the Nile's muddy banks. We're not tourists here, we're not scholars on a cushy tour. You're a young woman living your entire life in this landscape, a place that history books often paint with broad, gilded strokes. Tonight, we're going to peel back the layers and see what it was really like to be a woman in ancient Egypt. Not the queens, but the countless ordinary women who made up the society. This is a story you probably won't survive. Not in the sense that you'll be in physical danger, but in the sense that your modern sensibilities are about to be completely demolished. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. If you're here, maybe post your location and local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You don't have a name yet. Not really. Not one that matters to anyone beyond your immediate family. You're born into a small, sun-baked village on the edge of the Nile, a place of mud brick houses and endless labor. Your mother, exhausted from the birth, barely has the strength to smile. Her life, and now yours, is a relentless cycle of work. As a baby, you are just another mouth to feed, and food is a precious, hard-won commodity. The days are a blur of heat and the rhythmic sound of your mother's hands on the grinding stone. You are a girl, a daughter, and in this world, that means one thing. You are a resource. You will be a wife, a mother, and a laborer, and your purpose has been decided for you from the moment you took your first breath. As you grow, your education is simple and practical. Not like the privileged few who learn to read hieroglyphs. You are taught how to grind grain, a process that is as physically demanding as it is monotonous. Your small hands learn to sort lentils and chickpeas. Your back learns to ache from bending over. By the time you are 7, you are a full-fledged member of the household labor force. Your older brother, who is a few years older than you, is off with your father, learning the trade of farming or maybe masonry. His life is also hard, but his future is different, more direct. Yours is defined by the home, by the rhythm of the hearth and the fields. Historians still argue whether there was any formal education for peasant girls at all. But for you, the school is the dusty ground beneath your feet and the calloused hands of your mother. The sun rises and sets, and the only break from the monotony is the occasional festival or a visit from a traveling merchant. A quirky detail you learn is that children's toys are often just simple clay animals or dolls made from linen scraps. You have a small, carved wooden cat, its ears chipped from years of play, and you cherish it. It's a brief, childlike comfort in a world that demands you grow up impossibly fast. Your days are dictated by the needs of the family and the whims of the Nile River, which is both a source of life and a constant threat. You learn to fear its unpredictable floods, to pray to the gods for a gentle rise and a rich deposit of silt. But most of all, you learn that your life is not your own. You are a cog in a great, ancient machine, and your sole purpose is to keep it turning, one exhausting day at a time. The seeds of your future are already sown, and they are not for you to choose. The years pass in a blur of dust and labor, and before you can truly understand what it means, the whispers begin. You are perhaps 12, maybe 13, and your body is starting to change, marking you as a woman. This isn't a celebratory coming of age, it's a notice of availability. Marriage is not a matter of romantic courtship or personal preference. It is a transaction, a merger of families and resources. And you are the primary asset. Your father, a man you respect but rarely see outside of mealtimes, will be the one to orchestrate this. He will have talks with other heads of households in the village, weighing the pros and cons of potential matches. Is the man's family prosperous? Will the union bring a new field to your own family's meager holdings? These are the real questions. Your feelings on the matter are, quite frankly, irrelevant. The man chosen for you is likely older, perhaps by a decade or more. He needs a wife who is strong, fertile, and already knows how to run a household. A girl your age is a blank slate, easily molded to his needs and expectations. When you finally meet him, it's a formal affair. You are dressed in your best linen dress, perhaps a new one woven by your mother specifically for this occasion. He examines you with a cold, Appraising gaze, not unlike how he would look at a new donkey or a piece of land. There's a certain grim practicality to it all. This isn't the stuff of love stories you might imagine today. This is a business deal. And you are the collateral. The dowry is a fascinating and complex part of the process. Historians still argue whether the dowry was truly a bride price, paid by the groom's family to yours, or a joint property settlement. For you, it's a bit of both. Your family provides a small dowry, perhaps a few pieces of pottery, some tools, maybe a cow if you're lucky. This property is technically yours, a sort of financial safety net in case of divorce or widowhood. But it is controlled by your husband. He is the steward of your assets, not you. A quirky tidbit is that marriage contracts, when they existed for commoners like you, were often oral and sealed with a simple feast. The real contract was the unspoken understanding of roles and responsibilities. He would provide for you, and in return, you would bear his children and manage his home. It's a transaction as old as time itself, and it's about to become your entire reality. You watch as the negotiations unfold. A passive observer in your own life's most significant event. There is no grand proposal, no getting down on one knee. There is simply the final handshake between the two fathers. A moment that seals your fate more firmly than any magical spell or divine pronouncement. You are now promised. The ceremony itself is just a simple feast. Your husband takes you to his home, and you are immediately expected to take on the duties of a wife. The quiet familiarity of your parents' home is replaced by the foreignness of his. And your old life evaporates as swiftly as water on a hot stone. Remember that grinding stone from your childhood? Now it's his grinding stone. And the grain you pulverize will feed his family, his children. The future is a clear, unyielding path of duty and labor, stretching out before you for as long as you can imagine. You are now in your husband's home, and the reality of your new status sinks in. Legally, you are considered a free person, not property, which is a key distinction from some other ancient cultures. You have rights, at least on paper. You can own property, you can inherit from your parents, and you can even represent yourself in a court of law. It all sounds great, right? A modern person might think, wow, they were so progressive. But hold on a second. This is where the sleepy part of the history lesson kicks in and the fine print starts to emerge. While you are not a slave, your legal status is inextricably tied to the man you are now bound to. Your husband is the head of the household, and his authority is absolute. Any property you own is managed by him. If you want to sell a piece of land you inherited, you need his permission and his signature. You are, in essence, a ward of the household, forever under the protection and control of a man. A historian might call this a form of legal dependency, rather than true independence. It's like having a bank account that you technically own, but you need your dad's approval to withdraw any money. And a quirky little fact is that your husband could legally punish you for insubordination, though the specifics of what that meant are vague and likely brutal. The law was there, but its enforcement, particularly in a small village, was often a matter of custom and brute force. Your legal rights are a bit of a double-edged sword. Yes, you can initiate a divorce, which we'll get to later, but that's a complex and often messy process. For now, you are expected to be subservient, to be the dutiful wife and future mother of his children. Your life is an endless procession of duties. You cook, you clean, you weave, you care for the animals. Your husband's decisions are your decisions. His priorities are your priorities. The law might say you are a person, but society treats you as an appendage to his will. Mainstream historical fact. Ancient Egyptian women could, in theory, own, inherit, and dispose of property. This is often cited as a sign of their progressive society. The reality, for a woman like you, is far more nuanced and less empowering. The one area where your agency is somewhat acknowledged is in the realm of religion and the gods. But even this is limited. You are expected to make offerings and participate in household rituals. But the major public ceremonies are the domain of men. Historians still argue whether the high priestess roles were truly powerful or largely ceremonial. But for you, a simple peasant woman, the distinction is academic. Your spiritual life is tied to the hearth and the family shrine, not the grand temples of the pharaohs. Your personal life and legal status are so intertwined with your husband's that it's difficult to separate where your rights end and his authority begins. So, while you may not be a piece of property, You are certainly not a free agent. You are simply a different kind of possession. Your life now is a relentless cycle of domestic duties. A rhythm set by the sun and the needs of your husband's household. The day begins before the sun peaks over the horizon. You wake with a sense of dread, your muscles already aching from yesterday's toil. Your first task is to light the fire, coaxing a flame from embers carefully preserved overnight. Then begins the endless, thankless task of grinding grain. You kneel at a low stone table, a smaller stone in your hands, and you rock it back and forth over the larger, concave stone. The rhythmic scrape of stone on stone becomes the soundtrack to your morning. A hypnotic sound that signals the start of another day. The flour you produce is coarse, full of grit from the stones, which means that by the time you are an adult, your teeth are likely worn down to nubs. It's a fact of life, an unavoidable reality of your diet. After the grain is ground, you must mix it with water and a bit of leaven to bake the daily bread, the staple of your family's diet. While the bread bakes, there are other chores. You fetch water from the well, balancing a heavy clay pot on your head. You tend to the small garden plot, weeding and watering the onions, leeks, and a few herbs. You must sweep the dirt floors of the mud brick house, keeping it clean of dust and pests. Your hands are never idle. A quirky tidbit is that you might have used a simple broom made from bundles of reeds or palm fronds. This is a far cry from the modern appliances you're used to. And it's a testament to the sheer physical effort required for every single task. The men are in the fields, doing their own back-breaking work, but your labor is just as essential. A mainstream historical fact is that ancient Egyptian women were the primary caregivers and homemakers. And this was seen as a virtuous and necessary role. However, this is not a choice. Your survival and the survival of your family depend on your ability to perform these tasks day in and day out. Without complaint or pause, there is no such thing as a day off. The sun doesn't take a day off, and neither do you. Historians still argue whether the division of labor between men and women was as rigid as the archaeological record suggests. But for you, the reality is clear. Your days are spent in a domestic sphere that is both a sanctuary and a prison. The world outside your home is a place for men to conduct business, to trade, to deal with the affairs of the community. Your world is one of hearth, home, and endless, repetitive work. You are a wife, a homemaker, a mother, and a laborer. And these are not separate roles. They are all facets of a single, exhausting identity. The grinding stone is your constant companion, and its scraping sound is the lullaby of your life. The grinding stone is a constant, and so is the hope that soon you will become a mother. Pregnancy is a mix of dread and expectation. The community, your husband, and your own family all expect you to produce children, preferably a son, to continue the family line. It is a biological duty that hangs over you, a pressure more intense than any chore. Ancient Egyptian fertility beliefs are strange and fascinating. A quirky tidbit is that women would often use magical amulets or drink potions made from herbs and beer to ensure a successful pregnancy. You might have tried one, a concoction that tastes bitter and earthy, a ritual born of desperation and a deep-seated fear of failure. The 9 months are a period of heightened vulnerability. While some depictions show pregnant women continuing their daily work, you would likely be given a slightly lighter load. Your diet might be supplemented with richer foods if your family can afford them. But for most, this is a luxury. Your body is no longer just your own. It is a vessel for the future of your husband's family. A mainstream historical fact is that childbirth was an incredibly perilous event for both mother and child. There was no professional medical assistance, just the help of other women in the village, usually a mother or an older female relative. You would squat on a birth brick, a small, elevated brick or stone with a hole. To give birth, the process is painful, terrifying, and silent. You are not allowed to scream. You must endure. The danger doesn't end with the birth. Infant mortality rates were shockingly high. A baby's first few weeks and months were a treacherous journey. A historian might still argue whether the high rate of infant death was due more to disease, malnutrition, or primitive hygiene practices. For you, the reason is academic. You simply learn to brace yourself, to love your children fiercely but also to prepare for the crushing possibility of loss. A baby might be given a small amulet of the goddess Taweret, a protective hippopotamus deity, to ward off evil spirits and sickness. This is not a luxury, but a necessity, a small hope against a relentless tide of risk. You will have more children, as many as your body can bear and as many as survive. Each one is a new mouth to feed, another pair of hands for the future, but also another risk. You learn to live with the fear, to push it down beneath the daily rhythm of work and care. Remember the constant dust? It's not just on the floor, it's in the air, a constant companion to the ailments that plague your children. This is the ultimate test of your strength, not just physical but emotional. The burden of creating and sustaining life is yours, and it is a burden that never truly lifts. Your body, once a source of beauty and youth, is now marked by the labor of life. The stretch marks and the tired lines around your eyes a testament to the fact that you have done your duty. With a child now in your arms, your life pivots again, centering entirely on the new, fragile life you've brought into the world. Your days, which were already full, are now overflowing. Your own needs and desires are placed on a distant back burner, a luxury you can no longer afford. Every moment not spent on household chores is dedicated to the care and nurturing of your child. You are their first teacher, their nursemaid, their protector. You learn to read the subtle signs of hunger, the fretful cries of sickness. This is your primary role now, and it's a job without a break, without a single moment of true rest. Motherhood in ancient Egypt is a complex blend of duty and fierce, protective love. A mainstream historical fact is that mothers, especially those who successfully raised children, were highly respected. Your status in the community, and within your husband's family, increases with each healthy child you produce. A son is a source of pride, a guarantee that the family name and livelihood will continue. A daughter is another pair of hands for the household and a future asset for a marriage alliance. You raise them to understand their place in this world, to embrace the duties that will define their own lives. You are the one who teaches your son to respect his father and the gods, and your daughter to prepare for the endless cycle of domestic life. A quirky tidbit is that you might have used honey and dates to soothe a crying infant, or even given them a small clay bottle with a spout to drink from. These small, practical acts of care are your world. You have little time for leisure, no personal freedom to speak of. Your social life is limited to the other women in the village, a small circle of shared experience and mutual support. You commiserate over the endless work, the worries about sick children, and the small triumphs of a good harvest. These relationships are your lifeline, the only space where you can be truly seen and understood. Historians still argue whether women had a private life, separate from their public, domestic roles. For a woman like you, the distinction is meaningless. Your life is an open book, a continuous, public performance of duty. Your happiness is tied to the well-being of your family, your sorrow to their struggles. Remember the constant fear of infant mortality? That fear is now a part of your daily existence. You watch your child for signs of illness, praying to the goddess Taweret to protect them from the dangers that lurk in the dust and water. Your own health often takes a backseat. You eat what is left over, you sleep when you can, and you push through the exhaustion with a silent, iron will. The love you have for your children is pure and unconditional, but it is also a heavy responsibility, a constant weight on your shoulders that will only be relieved when they are old enough to fend for themselves. A future that seems impossibly far away. While your primary role is as a homemaker and mother, your labor isn't always confined to the mud brick walls of your home. The needs of the family and the whims of the seasons can pull you into the world outside. You are a crucial part of the agricultural process. When the Nile floods and recedes, leaving behind its rich, black silt, you are out there with your husband, your sons, and your daughters. You are planting seeds, a long day spent bent over the earth, your back protesting with every movement. The sun beats down on your neck, and the flies buzz annoyingly around your face. But you don't stop. You can't. The success of the harvest, and the survival of your family through the lean months, depends on this collective effort. A mainstream historical fact is that women in ancient Egypt frequently worked alongside men in the fields, a division of labor that was more fluid for the peasant class than for the elite. Your role might be to winnow the grain, tossing it into the air so the wind carries away the chaff, or to harvest flax, the stalks of which you will later weave into linen. This physical labor is exhausting, and it's a direct contrast to the popular images of elegant Egyptian women you see in museums. Those women, with their fine clothes and elaborate wigs, are a world away from your reality. You are covered in a thin layer of dust. Your hands are calloused, and your face is etched with the lines of relentless sun and toil. You might also earn a little extra money by spinning thread or weaving cloth for sale at the local market. A quirky tidbit is that you might have used a hand spindle, a simple wooden rod with a small stone or clay weight at the bottom, to spin fibers into thread. This is not a hobby, it is a necessity. The meager profits you earn might be used to buy a bit of extra grain, a new pot, or a small toy for your child. Historians still argue whether women had a truly independent economic role or if their earnings were always considered part of the household's collective income, managed by the husband. For you, the distinction is academic. You work to feed your family, and that is all that matters. Your work is a constant, a presence as reliable as the rising sun. It gives you a sense of purpose and a certain kind of power, a quiet strength born of necessity. You are not a helpless figure. You are strong, capable, and indispensable. Your value is not just in your ability to bear children but in your ability to work the land and the loom. However, this strength doesn't translate into freedom. It simply means you are a more valuable resource. You are a workhorse, a vital part of the machine, but you are not the one steering the chariot. You are an essential part of the production, but you are not the owner of the produce. Your labor, whether in the fields or in the home, is always for the benefit of the family, and that family is always headed by a man. Let's shift our gaze for a moment from the sun-baked mud brick of your home to the luxurious, sprawling villas of the elite. You might think that being a wealthy woman would free you from all this drudgery. And while it's true that you wouldn't be grinding grain or toiling in the fields, your life, too, is confined by a different kind of gilded cage. A mainstream historical fact is that noble women and queens had significant influence and could hold positions of power. But this was the exception, not the rule. The vast majority of elite women, and perhaps you, if you were born into such a family, had their own set of chains. You would be a pampered but ultimately powerless figurehead. Your days would be filled with supervising servants, directing the kitchen staff, and overseeing the household accounts. But the ultimate authority, the final say on all matters, still rests with the man of the house, your husband or father. You would be expected to maintain a flawless appearance, a symbol of your family's wealth and status. Remember that worn wooden cat you cherished as a child? As an elite woman, your toys would be made of ebony and ivory, but your life would be just as much of a performance. You would be a living ornament, a beautiful object to be admired and displayed, but not to be heard. A quirky tidbit is that elite women's wigs were often woven from human hair and could be quite elaborate, adorned with gold and beads. The process of getting them just right was a significant daily ritual. Your marriage would be even more of a political and economic arrangement than a peasant woman's. You would be married to a man of equal or higher status, a union designed to secure alliances and consolidate power. Love is a happy accident, not a prerequisite. Your primary duty is to produce heirs, and the pressure to do so is immense. You would have your own servants to tend to your children, but the ultimate responsibility for their education and upbringing would still fall on your shoulders. You are a manager, not a laborer, but your life is still defined by your domestic role. Historians still argue whether the power wielded by some queens, like Hatshepsut, was an anomaly or if it reflected a broader, if hidden, form of female power. But for you, the average elite woman, their stories are as distant as the stars. Your life is one of quiet expectation. You are a symbol of grace and breeding, but you have no real agency. You can't just leave the house and go for a walk without a retinue of servants. Your world is the enclosed garden of your villa, the private rooms where you receive other elite women, and the ceremonial public appearances where you are seen but not heard. You are beautiful, you are wealthy, but you are not free. Whether you're a humble peasant woman or an elite lady, one constant presence in your life is the vast, complex world of religion. The gods and goddesses of Egypt are everywhere, in the rising sun, the fertile Nile, the promise of the afterlife. Your role in this spiritual landscape, however, is a very specific and often limited one. A mainstream historical fact is that while men could become priests and serve in the great temples, a woman's religious duties were primarily centered on the home and family. You are the keeper of the household shrine, The one who makes small offerings to the gods and ancestors to ensure the well-being of your family. You light the incense, you pour the libations, and you whisper the ancient prayers. You would have a special connection to certain goddesses, particularly those associated with motherhood, fertility, and protection. Hathor, the cow goddess of love and joy, is one you would pray to for a good harvest and a healthy pregnancy. Isis, the great mother goddess, is another, a figure you would call upon for protection from sickness and bad fortune. A quirky tidbit is that small, personal amulets of these goddesses would be worn or kept in the home. Objects you would have held and prayed over in your moments of deepest need. They are not just symbols, they are tangible connections to the divine. Little bits of magic to ward off the relentless hardships of life. While you are the spiritual leader of your home, your access to the larger, public religious world is constrained. You would not likely be a temple priestess, a role reserved for women of high status. And even then, their duties were often more ceremonial than powerful. Historians still argue whether these priestesses had any real influence on religious doctrine or were simply beautiful figureheads in a male-dominated religious hierarchy. For you, the peasant woman, the grand temples of Karnak or Luxor are a world away, places of awe and reverence, but not places you can ever truly belong. You might attend a festival, a public procession of a god's statue, but you would be a mere spectator, a member of the anonymous, reverent crowd. Your spiritual life is intensely personal and practical. You pray for the crops to grow, for your children to survive, for your husband to return safely from his work. The gods are not abstract concepts, they are forces that directly impact your daily life. Your relationship with them is one of constant negotiation, a plea for their favor and a bargain for their protection. You have a quiet, enduring faith, but it is not a faith that grants you power or influence. It is a faith that helps you endure. Remember the amulet of Taweret you gave your child? This small, silent act of faith is the extent of your public religious life. A powerful, personal gesture in a world that sees you as a servant of the household and a vessel for the next generation. But not as a true spiritual leader. Living in ancient Egypt, your health is a constant source of concern, and the treatments available for sickness are, to a modern mind, a mix of the bizarre, the terrifying, and the completely unscientific. As a woman, your health is particularly scrutinized, especially in relation to your fertility. A mainstream historical fact is that Egyptian medicine, while advanced in some areas like surgery, was based on a fundamental understanding of the body that was often intertwined with magic and superstition. For you, this means that a simple cough could be treated with an herbal remedy. But a more serious illness might be blamed on an angry deity or a malevolent spirit. A quirky tidbit is that crocodile dung was a common ingredient in many remedies, including those for contraception and general feminine health. It was believed to have certain properties that would help with fertility and protection from disease. Can you imagine? You would take a small, dried piece of crocodile dung, mix it with honey, and perhaps insert it as a suppository. The thought alone is enough to make you feel a bit queasy. And the likely bacterial infections that would result are a far more immediate threat than any malevolent spirit. You'd also likely be treated with spells and incantations. A priest-physician might be called upon to chant a special prayer over you. Or you might be given an amulet to wear, a small piece of carved stone or wood meant to ward off the sickness. Historians still argue whether the medical papyri we have today were widely accessible to common people or if they were largely the domain of the elite and the professional physicians. For a woman like you, a peasant in a small village, your medical care would be a mix of what your mother and grandmothers knew. And the local folk healer, they would apply poultices made from herbs, use honey as an antiseptic, and perhaps even try to set a broken bone. But for serious illnesses, like a severe fever or an internal infection, there is little hope. Childbirth, as we've already discussed, is a particularly dangerous time, and the lack of proper hygiene means that a simple infection could be a death sentence. Your body is seen as a tool, a vessel for the creation of life and a machine for labor. When it fails, the consequences are dire. There is no social safety net, no public health care. Your well-being is a family matter, and your ability to work is directly tied to your family's survival. Remember the grittiness of the bread? Over a lifetime, that constant grit would wear down your teeth, leading to abscesses and painful infections that would likely go untreated. Your health is a reflection of your station, and your suffering is simply a fact of life, to be endured silently, just like all the other hardships. In a society where your worth is often defined by your ability to work and produce children, your physical appearance takes on a practical importance beyond mere vanity. Ancient Egyptian beauty standards were specific and demanding, and the lengths you would go to achieve them are, to a modern mind, a bit unsettling. The ideal was a slim, almost androgynous figure with a high waist, and the use of cosmetics was a central part of daily life. For you, a peasant woman, this isn't about looking good for a date, it's about presenting a healthy, fertile image to your husband and community. A mainstream historical fact is that both men and women wore eye makeup, primarily a black coal made from galena. This wasn't just for looks, it was also a form of protection. The coal helped to reduce the glare of the relentless sun and acted as a mild antiseptic, helping to ward off eye infections, which were common due to the dust and poor hygiene. You would use a small stick to apply it, a process you learned from your mother. It's a simple ritual, one that gives you a moment of quiet focus each morning. A quirky tidbit is that the green eyeshadow, or malachite, was also popular, and some historians believe it had medicinal properties as well, perhaps a belief rooted in the color's association with new life and the Nile. Your skin is a constant battle against the sun and the dust. You would likely use oils to moisturize and protect your skin, perhaps a simple mix of castor oil or olive oil. Remember that crocodile dung sunscreen? While that's more for internal use, you would still rely on natural substances to protect your skin from the harsh elements. You might even use a special kind of mud, a sort of primitive face mask, to soothe your skin after a long day in the fields. Your hair, unlike the elaborate wigs of the elite, is often braided and covered with a simple headscarf to keep the dust out. A woman's hair was considered a powerful part of her identity, and you would care for it with a deep, almost spiritual reverence, even if you were just a peasant. Historians still argue whether the elaborate beauty rituals of the elite trickled down to the common people, or if they were an aspirational ideal that was impossible to achieve. For you, the truth is somewhere in the middle. You can't afford the elaborate wigs or the expensive perfumes, but you can, and do, use what is available to you to care for your body. The goal is not just to be beautiful, but to be healthy, to project an image of vitality and fertility. Your body is a testament to your life, your calloused hands from grinding grain, the lines on your face from squinting in the sun, the strong muscles in your legs from fetching water. These are not flaws, they are badges of honor, a silent chronicle of a life well lived in the service of your family. Your beauty is not a cosmetic creation, but a testament to your strength. While your marriage was a practical, unromantic affair, it wasn't necessarily a life sentence. Ancient Egyptian society, in a surprising twist, was one of the few ancient cultures where divorce was not only possible but relatively common. This is a mainstream historical fact that is often cited as proof of women's elevated status. But hold on, the reality is a little more complicated and a lot less empowering than it sounds. For a woman like you, initiating a divorce is a huge and frightening step, one you would only take under the most dire circumstances. If you initiate the divorce, you are entitled to your original dowry and a portion of the family's shared property, an amount that would be stipulated in the, often oral, marriage contract. This sounds good in theory, but remember, your husband was the one managing all the assets. What if he claims there was no dowry? What if he simply refuses to give you anything? There is no legal aid office, no government body to enforce the decree. You would have to rely on the goodwill of your community and the pressure of social norms, which is not exactly a rock-solid guarantee. A quirky tidbit is that divorce was often initiated by a simple, public declaration from either party: "I leave you." There was no need for a messy court case, just a public acknowledgement that the marriage was over. It was a simple process that belied the complexity of the emotional and financial fallout. Remarriage, for a divorced woman, is also a possibility, but it comes with its own set of challenges. You would be considered damaged goods, a woman who couldn't make her first marriage work. Your prospects would be far more limited, and you would likely marry a man who is older, perhaps a widower, someone who is looking for a mother for his children and a manager for his household. Not a partner in the truest sense of the word. Historians still argue whether divorced women were ostracized or if they were able to re-enter society with relative ease. For you, the answer is likely a bit of both. You would have the sympathy of other women who understand your plight, but you would be viewed with suspicion by the men and the community at large. The prospect of divorce is a safety valve, but it's not a path to liberation. It's a last resort, a desperate escape from an abusive or untenable situation. And what about your children? The custody of children in ancient Egypt was a complex issue with little clear law. It's likely that the boys would stay with their father, and the girls would go with you. But this was a matter of custom, not law, and could be disputed. Divorce means you lose your home, your social standing, and possibly your sons. A painful price to pay for your freedom. You may leave your husband, but you never truly escape the relentless, demanding role that society has carved out for you. Your freedom, if you can even call it that, is a lonely and impoverished one. If you are fortunate enough to live a long life, you will eventually enter the stage of old age, a period that brings with it a different kind of vulnerability. As an elderly woman in ancient Egypt, your status is a direct reflection of your family's success. If you have raised strong, healthy sons who have their own households, you will be cared for, and your place is secure. Your son will become the new head of the household, and you, as the matriarch, will be a revered figure. You will sit in the sun, watch your grandchildren play, and offer your wisdom and advice, a living link to the family's past. A mainstream historical fact is that the elderly were generally respected and cared for, and it was considered a great social transgression to abandon one's parents. However, if you are widowed, your situation becomes far more precarious. You are no longer under the protection of a husband. You are a dependent, a burden on your male relatives. Your brother or your son is now responsible for your well-being. If they are a good, dutiful son or brother, you will be taken care of. But if they are not, you are left to the mercy of a society that has little use for an old, childless woman. You could become a beggar, a figure on the margins of society. A sad end to a life of relentless labor. A quirky tidbit is that you might have been given a small annuity or a small plot of land by your family to provide for your old age. But this was a matter of family custom, not law, and could be revoked at any time. Historians still argue whether the laws that gave women some property rights were truly effective in protecting them from destitution. For you, the truth is that your security rests not on a legal document, but on the strength of your family bonds and the character of your male relatives. The best a woman could hope for was a strong, dutiful son, a son who remembered the sacrifices you made for him. Your power in old age is a quiet, moral power, a gentle influence over your son and his family. You are the holder of memories, the keeper of traditions, the living history of your lineage. The physical toll of your life's work is etched on your body. Remember the constant grain grinding? The grit has long since worn down your teeth, making eating a painful process. Your back aches from a lifetime of bending over in the fields. Your hands are gnarled from weaving in domestic work. You are a testament to a life lived, but also to a life of endless labor. You have seen your friends and family pass, and you are a survivor. But your survival is dependent on the kindness of others. A final, humbling reality for a life that was never truly your own. You have earned your rest, but it is a rest that is given, not earned. You are a queen of your household, but your kingdom is dependent on the goodwill of your king. The inevitable end of your long life approaches, and with it comes a final, profound reality check on your status. In ancient Egypt, death was not an end but a transition, a journey to the afterlife, and your journey to that glorious, eternal field of reeds is inextricably linked to the men in your life. A mainstream historical fact is that the preparation for the afterlife was a central part of Egyptian religion and daily life. You, like every other Egyptian, would hope to be judged worthy by Osiris and to live forever. But your chances of achieving this are, to a certain degree, dependent on your husband or son. The proper burial rituals and the preservation of the body, even for a peasant, were crucial for the soul to continue its journey. While not as elaborate as a pharaoh's, a proper burial would still require resources. Your son would be responsible for making sure this happened. He would pay for the simple wrappings, the small coffin, and the offerings for the burial. If you have no surviving male relatives, your chances of a proper burial diminish, and your soul is left to wander the darkness. A lonely, terrifying prospect. A quirky tidbit is that even for commoners, there would be a small wooden plaque or coffin with a simple drawing of the person. A rough rendering of your face to help your soul find your body again. It's a small, poignant gesture that highlights the importance of identity even in death. Your journey to the afterlife is also a solo one. In a sense, remember the Book of the Dead? That's a guide to the underworld. A collection of spells and incantations to help the deceased navigate the dangers and trials of the afterlife. For a woman, a quirky detail is that your journey would be different from a man's. Your spells and incantations slightly altered to reflect your identity as a woman. The magical rituals were designed to help you avoid the pitfalls and traps of the underworld. But they were not always foolproof. You would face the judgment of Osiris, and your heart would be weighed against the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth and justice. You hope that your life, though one of relentless labor, was a just and virtuous one, that your heart is lighter than the feather. Historians still argue whether the afterlife was truly egalitarian, or if the male-dominated religious structure continued to give men an advantage even in death. For you, the peasant woman, the distinction is academic. You hope for the best. You pray to the gods, and you trust that your son will honor you with a proper burial. Your life was defined by the men in your life, and your death is no different. The ultimate fate of your soul, the promise of eternal life, is in their hands. The final act of your life, the final hope for your soul, is a testament to the fact that you never truly had full control over your own destiny. Not in life, and not even in death. So, you have lived your life. You have been a daughter, a wife, a mother, and an old woman. You have toiled in the sun. You have risked your life in childbirth. And you have watched your world revolve around the men who own and protect you. As you look back, you are faced with a complex legacy, one that is often simplified by modern historians. A mainstream historical fact is that ancient Egyptian women enjoyed more rights than their counterparts in Greece or Rome. But what does that really mean? It means you could own property, but your husband managed it. It means you could initiate a divorce, but you risked everything. It means you were a person in the eyes of the law, but a dependent in the eyes of society. Your life was a testament to the endurance of the human spirit. You were strong, resilient, and utterly indispensable. The pyramids were built on the backs of men, but the society that built them was sustained by the silent, relentless labor of women like you. A quirky tidbit is that even the most celebrated queens, like Nefertiti, often had their power questioned or erased after their deaths. A reminder that even at the highest levels of society, female power was fragile. You, a peasant woman, never had that power to begin with, and so you never had to worry about its loss. Historians still argue whether the rights of ancient Egyptian women were truly empowering or simply a legal framework that facilitated a deeply patriarchal society. For you, the answer is clear. Your rights were a set of rules that made your subservience more organized. Not less. You were not a slave, but you were never truly free. You were a vital cog in the machine, but you were not the one turning the wheel. The grinding stone, the loom, the birth brick, these were the true symbols of your life, not the legal papyri that granted you abstract rights. And now, as you close your eyes for the final time, you can feel the warmth of the sun on your skin, the grit of the dust on your tongue, the memory of your children's hands in your own. The afterlife, a place of peace and rest, is your final hope. It's a place where you will finally be free from the demands of the living. A place where your body is no longer a tool and your identity is no longer tied to the men who defined your life. You have paid your dues. You have done your duty. And you have endured. And in that quiet, silent endurance, there is a certain kind of power. A power that history books often miss. It is the power of a life lived. A life of relentless, thankless, and utterly beautiful work.